Hello and welcome everyone to another interactive session on career guidance. Today we are going to know more about chemical engineering and careers in chemical engineering. And for that we have with us Venkat, who is an experienced chemical engineer and currently the assistant vice president in Chempla Sanmar. So welcome Venkat. We're really happy to have you.
Thanks, Saurabh. Good evening, everyone. Like Saurabh introduced, I'm a chemical engineer. I'm working in Chempla Sanmar currently. So I have around 15 years of experience in this field. I have done my BTech in chemical engineering from IIT-Madras. I passed out in 2008, 2004 to 2008 batch. I was part of that. So, this session reminds me, of days my father used to take me to, seniors and, ask me to meet them when I was in +1, +2 and all, maybe 20 years back or so. So I'm happy, to help you, my father used to find out so many people and, used to take me around. So I think you are lucky that Saurabh is able to, find people and bring you all together here. So I'm happy to help you guys. You can ask me any questions. I'll be happy to help you.
Thanks, Venkat, for those kind words. Before we go deeper, I want you to, in simple terms, elaborate or just describe what is chemical engineering. It's not a very common field of engineering in India, at least a field which people have not heard of. So maybe in very simple terms, describe what is chemical engineering and what a chemical engineer does.
Yeah, I think any engineering is about putting the science and technology to life, at a much larger scale, so that many people can benefit out of that. So chemical engineering is also very similar. It's only it's that we have certain things working, let's say in a small scale in a lab. You have some processes working, and when you say chemical, let me start with chemicals. Chemicals are everywhere, to find, right from the basic cooking things like salt, sugar, vinegar, whatever, baking soda, whatever, to petrol, to complicated pesticides, insecticides, to pharmaceuticals, to paints, to dyes. So wherever you'll see chemicals everywhere in your household. So chemical engineers basically produce all these chemicals for you at factories. Okay, so what we do is there are certain things which work in a lab, maybe in a small scale. We have to chemical engineers take it to a plant scale, where tons and tons of material get produced and used by so many consumers. So that is what chemical engineering is in short. A simple thing to explain chemical engineering is maybe cooking. A kitchen is a very good example of a small scale say chemical production. We can say whatever your mothers are doing or sisters are doing, is a small scale chemical production they are trying to do. So cooking for, let's say, a family of 4 is different, and cooking for, let's say, 1 lakh people or whatever, it's completely different. So chemical engineers make that happen, let's say cooking at a 1 lakh scale or whatever, at a much more larger scale. So we need different type of equipment, we need different thought process for that, and what we do in a very small scale. So that is what chemical engineers do in short.
Interesting. Thank you for that. First, we would like to know how you got into this field. What was the motivation? Was there an event? Was there a person who motivated you to get into specifically chemical engineering? Because you ended up in IIT-Madras, right? And you did your BTech.
Yeah.
How did you get motivated to choose chemical engineering?
I like maths. Actually, I like biology as well, but maths was more, interesting to me, or I used to love doing mathematics more. So that is where I chose engineering. So that's where I started writing, preparing for JEE and all. And then based on the rank, I chose chemical engineering. To be very honest, I'll not tell you some lies. I've been interested in chemical engineering right from birth or whatever. So then I liked it, since chemical engineering, people think that it's about chemistry or whatever, it's more about chemistry than engineering, but it's not, frankly. If you, even I was confused when I was, choosing this branch. I asked many people, they all told me that it's more of maths, physics, and not very much about chemistry. So I was a bit surprised, to know that, but, when I entered the course, I realized that it's more about mathematics, more about physics, and not too much about chemistry. There is an element of chemistry, but you need not be an expert in chemistry. So that is how I took chemical engineering. So after I did my BTech, I liked that field, so I took a job immediately. And the working in a plant is something, I like. I like to be with people. I like to see things on what are happening, and be able to change things, see firsthand, do things firsthand. That is what I like. So I continued in this field and have been working the last 15 years.
Great. So you described in very simple terms what a chemical engineer does. You said it is basically cooking at a largest,
Yeah.
in very simple terms,
Yeah.
manufacturing of different chemicals.
Yes.
What does a person learn if he chooses opts for chemical engineering bachelor's course? What are some of the broad subjects that one would come across in a chemical engineering discipline?
Yeah, I think first 1-2 years is more of very basic stuff like maths, physics, and introduction of all the other branches. Maybe you'll have some courses from electrical, some courses from software, or coding, and there'll be a lot of courses. Very brief introduction in the first year and a half or two, and there are only some very introductory courses. And then you will start learning about things like heat transfer, mass transfer, or maybe let me give you some examples. Since we took the cooking as a topic, so see, when you cook certain things, in a pot or whatever, so when you cook it in a small scale, maybe your mother can just take a stirrer and stir it manually. But when you cook for a lakh, you can't do that anymore. You can't heat it from the bottom. It's a stove, and you can't. It's impossible. So you need to have different equipment. You need to have understanding of how to heat, let's say, a big vessel, how the contents inside that vessel move, and how things happen inside that vessel, what happens inside that vessel. So these are the things that you learn in chemical engineering. We call them maybe fluid dynamics, call them mass transfer, we call them heat transfer, thermodynamics, reaction kinetics. So these are the things you learn in chemical engineering. I try to put it in very simple terms.
Sure, sure. And after you pursue your BTech in chemical engineering, where you learn about various subjects, like you said, fluid mechanics and thermodynamics, mass transfer, heat transfer. After you get a BTech degree, what are the specializations that one can pursue in chemical engineering? Or can one do a master's in different areas? And what are those?
Yeah. I think these days it's not anymore about one field. If you want to do specialization, there are a lot of things. I mean, we used to, even in our days, I'm talking about 15 years back, we used to have nanotechnology. There is always, pure chemical engineering. You can do masters, you can do PhD and all that. But there are a lot of other things that you can do. Polymers, that forms some sort of material science. It comes in along with chemical engineering. There is so much in biology these days, that chemical engineers can do. So biotechnology plus chemical engineering. There is like nanochemistry that I told. So chemistry plus chemical engineering. So there are lots of, I think, specializations. Saurabh, maybe you can explain more, since you are doing a PhD.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I work in, as you said, polymer science and polymer physics, and that's a part of that comes under the broad scope of material science, where we develop materials for different technological applications, and that involves some basic concepts of chemical engineering that we learned in the undergraduate degree. That's the BTech course. but it's more applied. Even though we have the fundamental understanding, we try to apply that understanding to develop new materials. That comes under the purview of material science. And as you said, there is biological engineering, right? Where, again, basic concepts of chemical engineering applied to a biological system, designing viruses, or designing viruses also, for that matter. Some viruses could be beneficial, and that is another application of chemical engineering, which is a big specialization. One can
dangerous to talk in these days, huh? COVID days. Yeah.
There are new emerging areas like data science, or optimization in chemical engineering, which people are moving into, using computers and using a lot of data which is generated in plants to make the plants perform better, reduce the time for which the plants are shut down, um, you know, to better run the plants or more efficiently run the plants. So that is an emerging area. So yeah, as you see, these are some of the specializations.
Yeah. I think there is also process control and instrumentation if you want to do certain things. That involves instrumentation, maybe electrical to a certain extent.
Yeah. So now that we talk about specializations, you're a BTech in chemical engineering, and you have worked in a chemical industry as a process and operations engineer in your early years. What are some of the other job roles that one can hold after becoming a BTech or a master's in chemical engineering?
Yeah, so I think your career will start with definitely the plant, because engineers needs to understand it's not just about theory or textbooks. You need to see the equipment in practice. You have to visualize how plants look. So for that, all of the chemical engineers' career must start in a plant, definitely. So once you have some experience, then then there are multiple areas which we can move into. You can go into production. You can grow in production. You can move into technology, and there is a scope for growth there. You can move into safety. There will be scope for growth there. And most of the top level people would be chemical engineers in all the chemical industries. So you can go right to the top. There is no stopping you if you are good with engineering, and some basic economics. Yeah, you can grow right up to the top in chemical.
And how is the job? How is the work-life balance? How is the like a job role of a chemical engineer in a plant? Is there a work-life balance? Are there long working hours? Is it safe? And how do you describe the job profile?
Yeah, so yeah, you'll be working in a plant, and plants run 24/7. Plants don't stop once you stop working. So, but everybody's job will not be 24/7. You'll have a decent work-life balance, I would say, unless there are some critical issues in the plant or whatever. That is there in every job. Even doctors might get called in late hours or whatever. And any person, any job can be called, when there is an issue. So in that way, I would say the work-life balance would be decent. It will not be very bad. But you should be prepared to work in a plant environment. That is something. And plants are not normally located inside cities or whatever. So that is something that you need to be aware of. They'll be in outskirts of cities. They'll be in industrial zones. So though all the infrastructure and all is quite good these days in those zones as well, but you will not be in the center of city for sure. So that is something that you need to keep in mind. And when you talk about safety, yes, all these chemicals have their own hazards. We keep hearing about accidents or whatever, in papers. But that's a job of a chemical engineer to make sure that there are no accidents happening in your plant. You understand your processes well enough to avoid any accidents happening in your plant. So if you are a good engineer and if you are able to understand things well and design things well in your plant, you should not be having safety issues normally. But yeah, the inherent nature is like that. That chemicals can have major accidents sometimes. Sure. But nothing to worry. Statistically, chemical industries are supposed to be more safer than our roads. people die in roads much more, and maybe 100 times more than they die in any chemical plant or whatever. So you need not be scared that you are working in a chemical plant. So you not be afraid. So, but the inherent risks are there. It's there in any industry. Inherent risks are always there. So
Yeah,
nothing to be overly worried.
Yeah, I would like to add a comment there. This is soon after you graduate with a BTech in chemical engineering and move to working in a plant, and that is a role of a process or an operations engineer. Or basically, chemical engineer is also called a process engineer because they deal with a lot of chemical processes. But again, if you choose to do your higher studies or a master's or a PhD, then the role, then the lifestyle or a job role or a job would be rather more in a lab setting, where you develop, um, you develop materials, you understand the basics, how the chemicals work, how the fluid flows, how the heat gets transferred, as you said, mass gets transferred on a laboratory setting. So there's some portion of the chemical engineers who work in labs also, and not all may choose to do choose to go in a plant.
Yeah.
And then again, your job after you pursue the master's or a PhD, you would more be limited to a lab setting. Yeah, so there are these two lines that you can go into as a chemical engineer. Yeah. Venkat, I want to know your opinion on how chemical, like when I decided to choose chemical engineering, I was told that it has a lot of scope. It's a evolving field. Um, what is your opinion on the scope of chemical engineering in the next 5 to 10 years? And what do you think are the major challenges in the field?
Yeah, like I told you, right? If you just see around wherever you sit, you'll see chemicals everywhere. So we need chemicals for our day-to-day existence, and they have become part of our life. So chemical engineering is going to stay, and there is no dip or anything. I don't see it happening anytime, anywhere. So that's going to be a good field. And if you talk about Indian context, I think the growth is quite high these days because of issues with respect to China and Western world trying to move out of maybe manufacturing and trying to do more of formulations or whatever. So India is seeing tremendous growth in chemicals. So this will continue for the next 5 to 10 years. And I think there is a lot of dearth of good chemical engineers in the industry. So if you are a good chemical engineer, you need not be worried about package or job or whatever. So it can be rest assured.
I think at the start of the session, you mentioned you were interested in math and biology. You were more strong in math, and you chose engineering, and then you ended up in chemical engineering, and you liked it.
Yeah.
You also mentioned that chemical engineering is not a lot about chemistry.
Yes.
How does anyone in the audience know that he or she would be a good chemical engineer? What are some of the personal attributes or inclinations that one needs to identify in himself or herself to know that chemical engineering is the right field for them?
Yeah. Like I told, engineers, for any engineer, it's all about looking things in a small scale or looking at sciences and imagining how you can apply those in real life to help many people or in a big way. So you need to have that flair for looking at small things and visualizing how you can make it in a very big way. So, and you should have basic competences, maths and physics, and these are the main things.
Sure.
And like I told, most jobs are in a plant scale, so you must be ready to work in a plant setting. Though, like Saurabh mentioned, there will be few jobs in lab as well, but you must be ready to work in a plant setting. And when you are in a plant setting, you are interacting with many people, so you should like working with people. And so yeah, these are the basic things. And And it's very good, I never felt that I need to do an MBA or anything, because it's so much of learning in a plant, where you interact with so many people, so many departments.
Yeah.
When you have a plant, it's not just about the chemical engineers, the equipment. For equipment, we need mechanical engineers. For the structure and buildings, we need civil engineers. We need finance, obviously, you need money. You'll be having quality departments to check how things are going in your the product, and also there'll be so many departments involved. There'll be R&D, so you'll be interacting with so many people, so many minds. So you'll learn a lot of management as well, in a plant scale. So you must like to be with people. You must be good with problem solving, good with maths, physics, and yeah, you must understand how things work in a molecular level, and how it is different in a larger scale. So you should be able to have some flair for that. So if you have these, I think, yeah, you'll be good chemical engineer, or any engineer.
Sure. I would like to add a comment that chemical engineering is not just about chemicals, but it's also it's a lot of interdisciplinary fields which are connected. It's a very interdisciplinary field. A lot of different disciplines are involved and go very hand in hand in with chemical engineering. For example, there's biological engineering. So you learn some things about biology. You learn some things about mechanical engineering also. You learn some things about chemistry. You learn some things about metallurgy and material science. So it's a very holistic kind of a discipline.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say it's a very fundamental field as well. Earlier, we had very few industries in India, so maybe there's a feeling that chemical engineering is not mainstream. But
Yeah.
not anymore. I would not say that anymore.
Yeah.
It's as mainstream as mechanical, electrical, civil, definitely.
Sure. Yeah. Let us talk about how do you become a chemical engineer now, starting from high school. Could you throw some light on what are some of the decent universities to get into and learn about chemical engineering or become a chemical engineer? And starting from high school, how do you reach that um, you know point where you're applying? Maybe talk about coaching that you can get and some of the exams that you need to answer to become a to get chemical engineering first. Yeah.
Understood. So yeah, for any engineering, I think like I told, maths, physics, these basics are very important. So focus on learning the concepts more. Concepts are very, very important. So I was from a state board. I am from Andhra Pradesh. I was from a state board, and our maths was very good in the state board. The syllabus was very good, but physics and all was not very good. I mean, when I say not very good, it's not practical. It's more about theory. It's more about just trying to mug up things, and teachers are also that way. So my physics wasn't very strong when I was in high school or whatever, and I used to get good marks because I just was able to mug up things and reproduce in the exam. So, but my science, like physics and all, were very bad, very poor in concept. So I had no coaching all the way till 10th, and I joined coaching only in 11th and 12th. So I had to put in a lot of effort to understand, basic concepts like distance, displacement, scalar, vector, whatever, all these small things. I used to know the definition, only when I started thinking more and more in 11th and 12th, I understood really what they meant. So my advice to all the people in high school is to start understanding things much more better. You have a lot of tools available these days. It's not like 15-20 years back where we did not have any tools available. So these days everything is available. You have very good visual tools. If you go to even basic sites like YouTube, also will have a lot of stuff if you want to understand some things better. So understand the concepts very well. Don't just mug up certain definition. Try to understand each and every word in a definition. When we say a definition, teachers cut marks. If you don't write the exact way, right? So for definition has a meaning. Each and every word in a definition has a meaning. So try to understand that meaning of each and every word in that definition. That will understand, help you go easy. It will not be as difficult as I found in 11th and 12th. You'll be finding it a lot more easier. I would not say you need coaching from 6th or 5th or LKG or whatever. You don't need coaching. You just try to understand your concepts much better in maths, physics, and chemistry. That should be good enough. And 11th and 12th, I underwent coaching. I would say it helped in a way. So, because teachers were very good in the coaching centers that I went, so they helped me understand the concepts much more better, and it gave you focused time to study certain things. So that way it helped in 11th and 12th, and there were regular exams. So you start applying the concepts that you learned, and you pick up speed when you write more and more exams. So this is a sequence. You understand concepts well, start applying them in real life or real problems or whatever the problems that you solve, and then get better at time management, more better at your accuracy and all that. So these are the steps that I would.
Yeah, and some of the decent universities or institutes, and some of the exams that
IITs are good definitely for chemical engineering. NITs are also good. BITS is good. I mean, these are the standard, I think, universities that we all know. There is another university in Bombay which is called UDCT. I don't know what's it called today.
Institute of
Technology. Institute of Chemical Technology. ICT is good. So there are good chemical engineers. I think you'll find the rankings for each branch these days. So you can go by those. I think go by those. Old institutes will have better labs and better faculty. Like I said, engineering is more about understanding things in a larger scale. So it's not just about theory. So your college which has more labs, which has old faculty, which has more contacts with alumni, and where they have contacts with industry. So those are the type of colleges that you need to choose, so that you understand engineering in practice more than just textbooks.
Sure. Yeah.
And exams are all standard exams that you write these days, JEE, NEET, and those things.
Yeah. Okay.
I think you guys will know much better.
Yeah. The information can be found on the internet.
Yeah.
Again, there's one big misconception surrounding chemical engineering which I come across often, which is chemical engineering is about chemistry and dealing with a lot of chemicals, which I, as you have said earlier, it is not entirely true. Are there any other misconceptions which are surrounding chemical engineering that you have heard of or you want to address?
Yeah, like I said before, it's not about chemistry, definitely. So just don't get worried. Your mother or whoever is cooking for you, they don't know what chemicals are inside your kitchen, but they know how to cook it, and cook it with a good taste. So they may not have the answers, why the taste is good or whatever, but they're able to do it. So it's the same. If you don't understand chemistry, also you can do chemical engineering. If you understand chemistry, that's also good. But it's not that if you don't understand chemistry, you are a zero in chemistry. So it's not that way. Some basic understanding is good enough. You need not be an expert in chemistry. For that, we have a separate department. We call it R&D, and we have people who are MSc in chemistry, organic chemistry, PhD in organic chemistry, and whatever. So that's a completely separate field. We take their expertise and then we do engineering. So don't worry about chemistry. If you're weak in chemistry, don't think that chemical engineering is not for you. You just need to understand certain basics in chemistry. So that's good enough. And if you pass through any of the engineering entrance examinations, you will have some basic understanding of chemistry, without which you can't make it anyway. So that is good enough. So don't worry about chemistry part. Other misconceptions, could be like, plant life is very tough, and it's not like a software job or whatever.
Is there a hazard to your is there a
health
hazard?
So if you do your basics right, I don't think it will be a hazardous life or anything. Nothing more than normal any other routine job hazards. But it's on the field. But there are advantages as well. You interact with so many people, so you get to learn some management as well. So there are advantages, and there are some slight disadvantages. Like I told, it will not be in the center of a city. It'll be a bit far off from cities. It'll be an industrial zone. So yeah, those are the.
I think you have
Yeah.
inspired. I think you have inspired the students enough that some of them will choose chemical engineering. But if someone does not get into chemical engineering, what next? Which is the
No,
field which is like similar or closer to chemical engineering?
yeah, these days I think branches are so integrated, that you can do minors or whatever in chemical engineering if you're so interested, but you couldn't make it to the chemical engineering. So you can take a minor in chemical. Like we discussed, polymers or material sciences will have very close interaction with chemical engineering. Biotechnology will have a lot of interactions with chemical engineering. So you take any branch, even maybe Intel, let's say company like Intel, maybe they manufacture chips and all that. So even if you are on that side, you can have some, you can do some courses and you can get into chemical engineering again. You have things like chemical vapor deposition and semiconductor manufacturing and stuff like that. So it's everywhere, chemical engineering will be everywhere. So whatever branch you choose, if you want to come back to chemical engineering, I don't think anything will stop you if you're really interested.
I think we have covered most of the aspects, and if there are questions from the audience, we can take it after we close the session. But before we end and take questions from the audience, is there any one piece of advice that you would like to give to the students in the audience? I think you have mentioned a couple of them before during your talk, but we like to reiterate or give another advice.
Yeah, I mean, not about studies or anything. Generally, always do the right things in life. So keep your conscience clean. That will make you more happy in your life. And right thing, you're all students. So right thing for students is respect your elders, respect your parents, respect your teachers, and learn. That's what you are supposed to do. So just focus on learning, and just keep learning. That's it. And don't worry about outcomes. Outcomes are not in our hand. Nobody can tell you what will happen, how much will you score or whatever. It's just not in our hand, not in your hand, not in anybody's hand. So what is in your hand is to study and do well. And to study and do well, have a healthy body, have a healthy mind. So play a bit every day. Try to do some physical exercise. Don't play games, computer games, or whatever. Play some physical games, football. I think Goa, I like football more. So play some football or whatever. Keep your body healthy, keep your mind healthy, eat well, sleep well. Those are the basic things. So do the right things. Don't worry about outcomes. If you do good things will happen to you. You need not chase anything. They'll come to you automatically.
Great. I think that was great. Thank you so much, Venkat, for joining us and sharing your insights and a lot of information about chemical engineering. If there's anything else that students would like to know, they can contact me and then I can address them, or I can direct the questions to you later, get back to them.
Sure.
So with that, it's a time we take questions from the audience. Is there any? So if anybody has any questions, feel free to write your name or the question in the chat and I can read it out to Venkat. There's a comment saying that it was an insightful session. I have one question for you. I know I'm sitting in the US now. How do you think? What do you think is the scope after you do a BTech in chemical engineering, and how do people look at chemical engineering in India, and do people move abroad nowadays, and why?
Yeah, I think like I mentioned, all engineering is about facilities and having good labs, good contacts, good industries to work with. So that's where chemical field was more in the West in the earlier days. Now it's more and more moving towards India, moving towards other countries. So yeah, you have good universities there. You can do your masters, you can do your PhD there for sure. but there will be good opportunities in India as well. I don't think India will be behind anymore. But in US and all, you'll have different systems, a lot of regulations, which is not so well laid out in India yet. But I think, by the time this group graduates, I'm sure, our regulations also will be quite good, and we'll be on par with world-class regulations and world-class facilities. So don't see any issues there.
I think that was great, very encouraging. So I think it's a time we end the session. Thanks, Venkat, for coming again on this platform and talking to the students. All the best for your career, and I'll see you sometime soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, Saurabh. I'm happy to help the students. So you can write to me or Saurabh anytime if you want to, have more detailed discussion or whatever. So happy to help, and very good initiative by Saurabh. So good, please continue such things, and all the best to all the students. Do well in your careers, do well in your school career.